What if I told you that there was one thing that if you focused on, it would triple your revenue and double your profits? That one thing is hiring. Today, what I want to share with you is my 3-part hiring framework. If you don't know who I am, my name is Layla Hormozi, and I have built and sold 3 businesses by the age of 28, leading to a $100 million net worth, where I use this exact framework to build all 3 businesses. And the reason I want to share with you guys the 3-part framework for how to hire the right people for your business is because that was the most painful experience I ever went through as a business owner. To have to fire people or flip people out feels very contrary to everything I want to do. And I don't want anybody else that has a business to have to go through that pain again. The first principle in hiring the right people is character. What is character? The mental and moral qualities of a person. They share the values of the business. Because you can have someone that has great character, but it might be great for a different business. Whereas what we want is someone that has great character aligned with this business. So we want to figure out, are people aligned with your values? The first time I realized that this was the main discrepancy in my hiring was we had a team meetup. We were all in person. I walked down to the hallway of the team meetup and I sat there and thought to myself, these people don't share our values. Because if they did, they wouldn't exhibit these behaviors. And people often ask me, how do you measure for values? Behaviors are a proxy to values. If you say you have a value, but you don't demonstrate it, do you actually have the value, or do you just wish that you did? Early on in my business career, I took people's words for face value. If you say that you align with these values, then you align with these values, and that's what we think. But what I learned later on is that behavior is the proxy for values. What you want to see is how they act. And then that tells you if they're actually aligned with those values. And I've made this mistake multiple times. Some of you might be able to relate to this. I had a guy and he was so smart, so sharp. And when he applied to work for me, I was like, I have to hire this guy. He's got this insane resume of experience. He's funny, he's charming, like he seems uplifting in many ways. I remember the moment that I realized I had really made a big mistake, which sucked because the guy took so much work off my plate. He got in a fight with a coworker. He shared with me the fight that he had gotten with that coworker, and I looked at what he had said to this person, and I was like, oh wow, that's pretty inappropriate. He called this person words that I will never even say on YouTube. And in that moment, I said to myself, this person does not have unimpeachable character. That is what led me to understanding how ruthless I had to be in prioritizing culture over anything. Because really think about it, right? And this is where a lot of people go wrong, is you think, gosh, I can't hire somebody who doesn't have 10 out of 10 skills in finance, because how are they gonna learn that? I can't hire somebody who doesn't have 10 out of 10 skills in being a salesperson. How are they gonna learn that? Do you think it's harder to learn how to make a sale or how to have a hard conversation if you're very passive? Soft skills and character is much harder to teach than hard skills. So the first piece of this framework is you have to safeguard your values. You have to make sure that people are aligned with your values above all else. So how do we find this out? I call it operationalizing your values. Using behavior as a proxy for values rather than what somebody says. Which, by the way, when you interview somebody, they're pitching you, they're selling you. This is the best you're ever gonna see. So if you've got the ickies on the interview, you're definitely gonna have the ickies when they come in. What you want to do is write down your values, and then you want to determine how are you gonna assess your values in the interview process. That looks like asking questions that test to ensure they have demonstrated behavior in the past that aligns with the values you have. We have the value competitive greatness. What are some questions that I could ask somebody that would tell me if they've demonstrated competitive greatness in the past? One question that I ask people, can you tell me about a time that you achieved a really challenging goal? Now, why do I ask that? Because the best people I've had on my teams have achieved very hard goals. Now, it might not be in business. It might be in music. It might be pro athlete. It might be something personally that they've done. The second question I'll ask people is like, what is your goal within your career? And they say, I don't know why I want to work here. I'm fine with whatever. I want somebody who's stubborn about their growth. I want somebody who's competitive about being their best version of themselves. To give me an answer that's like, I've never really known, I've always just kind of gone where I've been asked to, I've just bounced around a lot, that tells me that person probably has a low amount of competitive greatness. Now, this is not to say that not knowing exactly what you want to do next is a bad thing, but knowing that you want to grow is the biggest indicator. And the last question I might ask, tell me about your proudest moment in your career. Because again, what is this asking? It's asking, what do they feel accomplished by? And so I'm looking for somebody that is going to tell me something that was deeply challenging or something where they went above and beyond something anybody's ever asked them for, but it built their character and made them a better person because of it. Being great because you want to be excellent, not for the business and not for the money, but for yourself. And so I'm looking for people who are intrinsically motivated. And so all of those questions are basically asking people to provide me with evidence of their intrinsic motivation, rather than people who just allow life to pass them by and go wherever the tide takes them. So this could go for another one, like if you have one around honesty, then it could be, when's a time where you were honest and it hurt someone's feelings, but you knew you need to do it anyways because it's in line with your integrity? What you want to do is you want to think through your values and then ask yourself, how would somebody with this value act? It's not what they say, it's how they act. And so I call this a reference question. We want them to refer or reference a past experience so that we can ask them enough of those questions enough times to figure out, are they bullshitting you or is this for real? Can they recall enough evidence that you're like, this is potent in this person? Layla, that sounds great, but how do I attract people with that kind of character? You can't attract people with great character unless you have even better character. If you are a musician and you want to find a mentor to teach you music, are you gonna go work for somebody who's worse at music than you? No. You're gonna try and find the person who's the absolute best at music. Right now, people want more than money. They want to feel like they have a purpose, and they want to feel like they have growth and opportunity within the place that they work. If you put your values out there, and you're screening for your values, and you're testing for your values, and you're saying, I'm not hiring people without these values, then you better fucking live up to those every day. Because if you don't, then you're gonna get lesser talent. The second principle when you're hiring to get the right people is competence. Do they have the baseline skills needed to successfully execute the role? You don't hire people for experience. You hire people for skill. Experience is only a proxy to skill. If you hire somebody to be your executive assistant, does it mean that they can only be the best executive assistant because they've done it for 10 years? Or could it be that somebody who was the concierge at a high-end hotel could be a great executive assistant? Could somebody who was head of guest experience at Disney World be a great executive assistant? It's not about the past experience they have. It's about the skills they've accumulated from that past experience. The biggest hack I ever learned is that people from hospitality are like the best customer service, the best EAs, and the best operations people because they have acquired so many skills working in that hotel and hospitality industry that transfer over. This is something that I have gotten wrong multiple times in my career. The first time I think I really fucked this up, I was trying to hire for a CTO for Allen, my software company. And when I was trying to hire for that CTO, I was like, I don't know anything about software. So I need to hire somebody with like the most experience. And so I'm like, yeah, we need someone from like Google or Apple or Microsoft or like one of these really big fancy companies. During the process, I didn't press on skills. I was impressed by the resume. And so I didn't feel like there's no way this person could possibly have had a job at Google rolling out their entire division if they didn't have these skills. That role cost me $300,000, not just in recruiting and how much I had to pay him when I let him go, and how much time and effort was lost in the company. When that guy came in, you know what I realized? I actually don't know why he succeeded in those places. Because he was the complete opposite of what I needed, and he didn't have any of the skills I was expecting. So what it taught me is that we cannot be enamored by somebody's experience on their resume. Experience cannot replace skills. We look for experience as a proxy to skills, but it cannot replace them, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't test for them. How do we make sure that people actually know how to do the frickin' job is we do competency testing. Guys, this should be so easy nowadays. You can put this into fucking ChatGPT and say, disseminate this down into the top 5 things this person needs to do. For example, if I'm thinking of a head of customer support, I might be thinking of managing emotional customers, building out an archive of customer inquiries, managing a support team, communicating with stakeholders, expanding our knowledge-based platform. Can I have someone truly submit or do some sort of test so I can actually see their performance? Or do I have to do situational referencing? Situational referencing is basically asking them to refer to situations in the past. For example, if I wanted to hire a head of customer support and I want to know they built out a knowledge base, I would ask them, can you tell me about a time in your last job, specifically this one that you had last year, did you build up the knowledge base and how did you do it? And I would let them tell me the story. And guess what? If somebody can't tell you a story about the thing they did, what do you think is happening? They're making it the fuck up. You want to ask them to refer to a story. And the 2 red flags I'll tell you is that if somebody lacks details and beats around the bush, it means they're probably not telling the truth. I was interviewing somebody to be head of development. I asked that person, how big of a team have you managed? This guy must have taken 7 minutes to tell me the size of team he had managed. And the reason it took him 7 minutes is because he had to give me all the things that he's done that are impressive besides managing people, and then how he has actually managed people this one time because his boss got fired and then they gave him 3 people to oversee, but he technically wasn't their manager, but he did oversee 3 people. He was literally delaying answering the question because he was nervous to give me the real answer, which is no, I have not. There are some instances where you can have people do some sort of test so you can understand, do they have this competency or not? So for example, I might be on an interview with somebody for head of customer support, and I would say, great, I'm gonna pretend to be an angry customer and just talk to me like you would an angry customer. I have done that one to multiple positions before, and what I've realized is like a lot of people actually don't have that skill. They might have been head of customer support, but they actually never had to deal with angry customers because turns out they always kicked them back to the sales guys. Or turns out they always kicked them over to finance and collections. They didn't actually have to speak to the customers themselves. What you wanna do through this is basically you wanna have what are the 5 core things this job does, and then how am I gonna evaluate each one of those 5 things to know that they actually have the skills to do the job. The third piece to this framework is commitment. Skill without commitment is untapped potential. You can have somebody with all the best character in the world, and they can have the craziest abilities and skills in the world. But if they're not committed to the job, they're probably not the right fit for your team. What does commitment mean? I would say it's the state or quality of being dedicated. You purposely restrict other freedoms so that you can have this one. So what does this mean in a job? It means I've committed to this job and I'm restricting myself from these other freedoms. This day and age, it's very common for people to do things on the side. And so what you need to figure out is what level of commitment do you need from different jobs? If somebody's going to be a leader in my company, I want them fully committed to this job. I don't want them doing things on the side. Why? Because I believe that leaders, if anybody in my company, should give discretionary effort. Individual contributors and such, I'm a little bit more flexible, but I would say that just because of the kind of company I have, I think people will get more out of the job if they give it all their discretionary effort rather than doing a bunch of side projects. How much freedom are you asking somebody to restrict in the rest of their work life to commit to this one thing? If I find somebody, but they're in a season of their life where they've gone through like the grit of working like morning to evening to this, and then they come and they see my company and they're like, wow, I've done that before and it was so fun, I wanna do it again, this, that. So seldom do they wanna do it again. They wanna feel it again, but they don't wanna wake up at 5 a.m. and go to bed at 10 p.m. and put in those extra hours again. And so sometimes people don't even realize for themselves that they want all the good without the sacrifice, without the commitment. And so you have to understand what phase of this person's life are they in. Most of our actual labor is done by people in their 20s and 30s. Why is that? Because at some point, your life changes, and that's not a bad thing, but you need to understand for the job that you're asking someone to do you need somebody who is making a large commitment and saying no to a lot of things, or making a commitment and saying no to some things? There are different jobs that require different levels of commitment. If I have somebody who is running my portfolio, running my acquisitions, running my marketing, I need them committed. Are they at a phase in their life where they're able to commit in the way that you need them to the job? Sometimes people tell themselves that they can commit, but then they end up not being able to. I've had people in the past who had their own businesses and they say, no, but I wanna learn and work for you. And so I'm gonna put this aside, I'm not gonna do it anymore, I'm just gonna work for this company. They were great for the first few months, and then about 5-6 months in, I'm like, what's going on? Like, nobody can get a hold of them, they're not responding on time, they're not putting discretionary effort in, like, I don't know what's going on in the department, I don't have clarity or transparency. And so then I'm like digging in, trying to figure it out. Both of them actually had continued to do their businesses on the side, thinking they could do it all. They didn't fully commit to the degree that was needed to do the job, and so the job suffered. And so you just need to figure out what season is your business in and what is required from the specific job you're looking for, and can that person match that? And so in my opinion, true commitment is acting as if alternatives do not exist. Commitment is a process one follows, not a statement that somebody makes. And oftentimes, you don't need a new plan, you just need to commit to the one that you actually already have. How do you know they're committed? What does this person give up to get this job? You see this in companies that do stock plans or they do equity. You know why it's smart for them to do that? Is because they're saying, you're betting on this job working out for you just as much as we bet on you working out for this job. Put $300,000 in because we know that that means that you're committed. And guess what? There's studies on this that show that executives who buy into the company, literally with their money to buy their stock, actually last longer and are more committed and have higher performance. So the question of how you know is, what did they give up? So to summarize it all, we want to make sure, does this person have the character? Do they have the competency? And are they committed? I call this the 3 C's to make sure that we get the right people in your company. And here's the thing, if you don't know what character looks like because you don't have values which are proxy to that, you can go to this video right here where I talk about how to build out your core values for your company so that you can get the right people in the right seats.